Chiamaka sat under the mango tree, the one she had avoided for so many years. Her thoughts were heavy, but Adalgo sat beside her, her bright voice cutting through the silence. "We need to find him," Adalgo said suddenly. Chiamaka flinched. "Find him? Why?" "To end this," Adalgo replied, her voice firm. "You cannot keep running from him. You must tell your story, Chiamaka. You must make him face what he did." Chiamaka shook her head, her eyes wide. "No, what if nobody believes me? He is a man, and I am just a girl." Adalgo grabbed her hand. "You are not just a girl. You are Chiamaka, the strongest person I know. If we let him go, he will do it again. To another girl, maybe to someone you love." The words hit Chiamaka like a thunderclap. She thought about the little girls in the village, skipping happily to the stream just as she once had. Could she let Obiora hurt them too? Once upon a time, in the peaceful village of Umuaka, there lived a little girl named Chiamaka. She had a bright smile that lit up the darkest nights and laughter that echoed like the soft music of the wind. Chiamaka loved her family deeply, especially her father, who called her his little star. They would sit under the big mango tree in their compound, and he would tell her stories of the spirits that protected their land. One sunny afternoon, when Chiamaka was only 7 years old, her mother sent her to fetch water from the village stream. The path to the stream was surrounded by tall palm trees, and the birds sang sweet melodies. Chiamaka skipped along happily, carrying a small clay pot. She greeted everyone she met with her cheerful voice, her bare feet pattering on the warm earth. At the stream, she met a man she had never seen before. His name was Obiora, and he had a smooth voice like the river's flow. He told Chiamaka he was a trader from another village. His eyes were kind, or so Chiamaka thought, and he offered her a handful of granuts. "Come, let me help you with your pot," Obiora said, smiling. Chiamaka hesitated but nodded. Her little arms were often tired from carrying the heavy pot, and this man seemed so kind. But Obiora wasn't kind. He wasn't like the friendly men in her village. He did something bad, something that left a scar so deep in Chiamaka's heart that her bright smile disappeared forever. When she got home, her clay pot was broken, her clothes were torn, and she refused to speak to anyone. Her mother, Nnena, noticed the change in her daughter. "Chiamaka, what is it? Why are you silent?" she asked, holding her tightly. But Chiamaka only cried, burying her face in her mother's lap. Weeks turned into months, and though Chiamaka's wounds healed on the outside, her heart remained broken. She began to fear every man she saw, even her father. She no longer sat under the mango tree with him. She avoided the stream and refused to go to the market. The village noticed her silence, but no one knew why. Chiamaka grew up in this silence, carrying the weight of her secret like a heavy stone. By the time she was a young woman, she was no longer the cheerful girl everyone remembered. Her beauty blossomed like the hibiscus flower, but her heart was closed like the shell of a snail. Men admired her from afar, but she never let anyone come close. The walls around her heart were tall and unbreakable. One day, her cousin Adalgo came to visit. Adalgo was loud, full of life, and determined to make Chiamaka smile again. "Nne, you cannot live like this," Adalgo said, dragging her to the village square during a festival. The drums beat loudly, and the air was filled with laughter and the smell of roasted yam. As they walked through the crowd, Chiamaka felt a shadow behind her. She turned and saw a man with eyes that froze her in place. It was Obiora. He was older, but she recognized him immediately. Her heart pounded as memories she tried to bury came rushing back. I know you, he said, his voice still as smooth as before. Chiamaka's hands trembled, but she didn't respond. Adago noticed her cousin's pale face and stepped in front of her. Leave her alone, Adago said sharply, but Obiora just laughed. Do you think she can hide forever? Obiora sneered before disappearing into the crowd. Chiamaka didn't sleep that night. Her past had returned to haunt her, and now she knew she couldn't run anymore. But how could she fight someone who still held so much power over her heart? Adago stared with her, refusing to leave her side. Nne, you must speak, Adago whispered, holding Chiamaka's trembling hands. If you keep silent, he will win. The night was long, and the journey to healing seemed endless. But as the roosters crowed and the first light of dawn touched the village, Chiamaka made a decision. It was time to confront her fears, her pain, and the man who had stolen her childhood. The festival continued for days, and Chiamaka knew Obiora would still be in the village. She had to face him. Adago promised to stand by her side, but Chiamaka felt the weight of her journey. As the drums played on, she prepared to step into the light and take back what had been taken from her. The next morning, the sun rose quietly over Omuaka, painting the village in soft gold. Chiamaka sat under the mango tree, the one she had avoided for so many years. Her thoughts were heavy, but Adago sat beside her, her bright voice cutting through the silence. We need to find him, Adago said suddenly. Chiamaka flinched. Find him? Why? To end this, Adago replied, her voice firm. You cannot keep running from him. You must tell your story, Chiamaka. You must make him face what he did. Chiamaka shook her head, her eyes wide. No, what if nobody believes me? He is a man, and I am just a girl. Adago grabbed her hand. You are not just a girl. You are Chiamaka, the strongest person I know. If we let him go, he will do it again. To another girl, maybe to someone you love. The words hit Chiamaka like a thunderclap. She thought about the little girls in the village, skipping happily to the stream just as she once had. Could she let Obiora hurt them too? No, she couldn't. But what could she do? Later that day, as the festival drums filled the air again, Chiamaka and Adago decided to go back to the square. This time, Chiamaka's eyes searched the crowd, not with fear, but with a quiet determination. And then she saw him. Obiora was laughing with a group of men near the palm wine stand. His voice carried over the noise of the festival. Chiamaka felt her chest tighten, but Adago squeezed her hand. You can do this. Chiamaka took a deep breath and walked toward him. Her legs felt like they would give way, but she kept moving. When she was close enough, she called out, Obiora. The laughter stopped. He turned, his smile fading when he saw her. For a moment, there was silence. The men around him exchanged confused glances. You remember me, don't you? Chiamaka said, her voice trembling but growing stronger with each word. I was the little girl at the stream. The one you raped. Obiora's face darkened. I don't know what you're talking about, he said quickly, turning to walk away. But Chiamaka stepped in front of him. You don't get to walk away, she shouted, her voice carrying across the square. People began to gather, their curiosity piqued. You hurt me, you broke me, and I will not be silent anymore. The crowd murmured. Elders came forward, their brows furrowed. Obiora's confidence wavered as more eyes turned toward him. Do you deny it? One of the elders asked, his voice stern. I didn't do anything, Obiora said, but his voice cracked. She's lying. She's not lying, Adago shouted from behind Chiamaka. I know my cousin, And I know the pain she has carried all these years. Chiamaka's hands shook, but she didn't back down. You can deny it all you want, Obiora, but you know the truth. And so do I. The elder raised his hand, silencing the crowd. We will not let this matter rest, he said. The truth will come out, and justice will be served. Obiora's face twisted in anger. You have no proof, he hissed. This is just a story, and stories mean nothing. Stories are everything, Chiamaka replied, her voice steady now. They are how we heal, how we remember, and how we fight back. The crowd began to murmur again, this time in agreement. Chiamaka felt a surge of strength she hadn't known she possessed. For the first time in years, she felt the chains around her heart begin to loosen. But the fight wasn't over. That night, as Chiamaka and Adago walked home, they noticed a figure following them. The shadows stretched long on the dusty path, and the air grew colder. Did you hear that? Adago whispered, her eyes darting around. Chiamaka nodded, her heart pounding. She turned to look behind them, and there he was, Obiora, his face twisted with rage. He wasn't done with her yet. Adago grabbed Chiamaka's hand. Run, she screamed. The girls sprinted through the village, their feet pounding against the earth. Obiora was fast, and his heavy steps echoed behind them. Chiamaka's chest burned, but she refused to stop. Not now, not ever. They reached Inena's house and slammed the door shut, bolting it tightly. What does he want? Chiamaka gasped, her back pressed against the door. To silence you, Adago said grimly. Chiamaka's eyes blazed with anger. He will not silence me again. Never. The night was long, but Chiamaka was no longer afraid. The storm brewing inside her was stronger than any fear. The next morning,